Greetings, beautiful people, and welcome to the third episode of the Teaching Beyond the Barriers podcast, brought to you by the National Network of State Teachers of the Year. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Warren Jr., award-winning educator, speaker, and professor, also known as R.H. Warren Jr. on social media. Special shout out to the NEA Foundation for the support. This is the Teaching Beyond the Barriers podcast, a podcast for educators, by educators, where we transcend the limits and unlock the true potential of education. Today, we are diving deep into the heart of our initiative, the Teaching Beyond the Barriers course. This episode offers insight and a look at how the course began, its objectives, and the transformative impact it is having on educators and students alike. Join me and Josh Parker as we pull back the curtain on this innovative approach to student-affirming education and explore how the Teaching Beyond the Barriers course is shaping educators of tomorrow and why this work matters more now than ever. Welcome to the Teaching Beyond the Barriers podcast, Josh. It is great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. You did forget one part of your introduction. You are a legend. So there you go. You forgot that. I just want to put that.
you had me there. Oh my goodness. I was like, wait. Did I really forget?
I just want to put that out there. You missed that one, but appreciate you, man. Glad to be here and happy to talk about stuff that's close to my heart and I know close to your heart. So appreciate you.
Absolutely. So for the listeners, can you tell the listeners who you are, your role in education, and a couple of your top accomplishments in education?
Yeah. So Josh Parker, and been in education now for almost 20 years, so 19 years, and have was started off as a career changer. So originally I went into sports communication, but found that my true passion lied in teaching. So I went back to school. From Prince George's County, Maryland is where I grew up, and did most of my teaching in Baltimore County after graduating from Towson University and then Notre Dame of Maryland University for grad school. And so I love this work. I've been an English teacher, grade 6 through 12, a department chair, an adjunct professor. I have done work in DC public schools as a coach, worked with Unbound Ed, and then now I'm at Education First as a senior consultant. So happy to be at this great organization. And I've done lots of work with Instoy as an executive board member, which we'll get into here. Been Maryland State Teacher of the Year 2012. I've been a Global Fellow. I've done lots of things about which I am very proud. My biggest accomplishment is just married to the love of my life, Tiffany Parker, and have two wonderful children, Layla Parker and Joshua Parker. So I now live in Charlotte, loving it down here in the Queen City, but a Maryland boy to the heart forever.
Man, I love it, man. You are incredible. Personally, you already know personally,
Yes,
you
sir.
are like a mentee to me. And so I'm incredibly excited to actually to dive into something that is super important, I believe, to both of us, but really important to the educational world. And it's the Teaching Beyond the Barriers course. And I kind of want to walk people through the origin story and the inspiration and the whole idea behind it. So can you share the story of what inspired the development of the Teaching Beyond the Barriers course? And how did the team kind of envision using student affirming education, or some people say equity, as the why behind this initiative?
Yeah, so you're a science teacher by trade. So I'm going to start by saying this effort happened at an atomic level. So I read a book many years ago called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I began to see how habit science can combine with education to create the type of outcomes that we're looking for. And so my colleague joined me at that time, my co-chair, Dr. Jemelleh Coes, and we started to think about, well, what are some ways that we can actually combine habit science and pedagogy with this idea of giving students what they need to be their best selves and finish their learning. And that's how we came up with the genesis of this. And so a lot of it was about weaving in all these different strands of ideas, from habit science to pedagogy to student affirming principles, responsive principles. And we weave them together in such a way that this course can follow a progression to develop the capacity within educators to deliver on these instructional practices that will be helpful for all kids. And so, one thing that the planning, where we planned here, is there are a million frameworks, and there are a million different sort of seemingly practices and responsive and sustaining pedagogies. And we wanted to, even though this has somewhat of a framework too, which we'll get into, we wanted to steer clear of being prescriptive about the what. We really wanted to focus on the how, right? Like Goldie Muhammad and Alfred Tatum and Gloria Ladson Billings and all those folks, we wanted to talk about, well, how does this work? How do we use the science of the brain and of habits and good pedagogical principles to actually input the practices that people say need to happen? And so we lended really on a lot of research to do that. And we talked about discretionary spaces with the professor out in the University of Michigan. Her name is not coming to mind right now,
Deborah
but
Ball. I got
that's
you.
right, Deborah Lowenberg Ball. She's amazing, and so we weave those together to create the idea that we're going to talk about how to use what is already innate to people and where they need to change with their identity to be able to input all these great practices and skills that folks have already informed us about in the work.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly unique, and we'll touch on it when we talk about like challenging traditional PD models
Mm-hmm.
and how this is really a unique approach. You
Mm-hmm.
talked about layering this in a way that that takes educators on a journey
That's right.
or take them on a road to becoming, right. And this course, we do have a framework, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
called the 5I model. Talks about identity, talks about
Mm-hmm.
investigation, intervention, inspection, and then impact. Can you elaborate like how this model serve as a roadmap for
Yeah.
participants to become more equitable educators and leaders and student affirming advocates?
Yeah, I love that question. And I even love the way that you use the word roadmap, because it certainly is a model and it certainly is a framework. But because it's laid out as a progression, it's really more of a roadmap of how we want folks to move through this content. Like the ability to think about, who do I want to be? Right? What kind of educator do I want to be? Right? And that also borrows from James Clear's model. Right? What kind of person do I want to be? What's my identity? Right? Then I started thinking about sort of introspection and thinking about what it is I want to do with my life in the classroom, and what are some ways in which I can be better about all those pieces. And then we started talking about, okay, as they move through this model and even through this roadmap, what else they need to consider or talk about. And so I think the entire idea of investigation and intervention and all those pieces is meant to be sort of mile markers along the road to becoming the type of educator that can deliver instructional practices that can improve outcomes for all students. We become better in phases. So, to borrow a wonderful title to a great book from Michelle Obama, like, we continue to become, we are becoming each and every day. But that way that we become, I think, is best guided by a roadmap where we're doing these intentional, reflective things and inspecting what's in our heart, what's in our head, and how can we use our hands to give the instruction that's needed to our children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love the way this roadmap walks us through each step of the way. And it's really,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at it, it's a holistic roadmap. It's not just here's some information, here's what you do, and here's when to do it. It's literally a transformative process that starts from the
Hmm.
inside out. And then when we look at the outside, we start to deconstruct and understand why this work is important. And then we start to really understand, are we really doing what needs to be done? And I really feel
Right.
like I say this all the time. I feel like with this course, it's more of just a human doing. You're
Right.
becoming a better human being because of this, and you're getting the
Hmm.
tools to actually move things forward in a way that is so unique, right? And so, as we know, as educators, professional development can be a pro, and sometimes it could be a con, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how you roll it out, depending on how much time you get to work with it,
True.
depending on how much space you get to grapple and to really dive into concepts, it could be a pro
Yeah.
or a con,
That's
right?
true.
So I want to talk about like this course in particular and how we challenge the traditional PD models, right? So in what ways does the teaching beyond the barriers diverge from the traditional professional development models, particularly in its approach to habit science? Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the first thing that I think that it does is it starts with a co-creation of certain goals. Like when we ask you what kind of educator do you want to be, like we invest you into our content by providing you with a personal, deep down, this is who I want to be, right? Oftentimes when PD is done, there is an assumption that the people that are joining want to be the thing that they're training about. We make sure that assumption is made explicit through asking you, what kind of educator do you want to be? And so there's like, it decreases the barrier, pun intended, to entry for the course, right? Teaching beyond barriers, right? Because it's something that you said at the beginning you want to do. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't feel forced upon you or it doesn't feel assumed without being explicit. What do you want to be? And when you put your own stakes in the ground and say, this is the kind of educator I want to be, then we start the journey. And that's, to me, a fundamentally different place than most professional development sessions, which start with an assumption that folks want to be this or that. So that's a fundamental difference. Another piece is that we work with what's already innate to you. Habit science is the way that habits runs our whole life, our unconscious mind, the things that we do without thinking. So we hack into that is already innate to you rather than only focusing on what is something new that you need to do. So we're latching on to something that is already a part of what you do, and we're just shifting it. And we're helping you to use your own built in habits to create better practices. Whereas most traditional PD says, do this thing, irrespective of, well, how do I work within my own biological scientific makeup to do this thing? And so we work with you, we root you in what you want to do, which I feel like is different than most PD that assumes that you want to be something and almost forces or encourages you almost by brute force to be different. Well, oftentimes, and I've been in conversations and I've been that facilitator that said, be different, do different. Oftentimes, after people feel hopefully inspired, typically after that, they say, well, how?
Yep.
How do I work with who I am to do the thing that you're telling me to do that's different? And I think this course does that differently, which is another way it diverges from traditional professional development. And finally, I think and hope that the way that it diverges from professional development is it provides sustainable results.
Mm-hmm.
When I can root a course in what I want to do, the motivation is mine. When I can root a PD in the ways in which I automatically work, then the actions are mine. And then when I can make that a part of what I do and increase my expertise so that I can create the environments that can push these automatic responses to be more frequent and more consistent, then the results are mine. So we don't own your process. We share the process with you, get you focused in the process so that you can own your own results. And I think those are three significant ways that it diverges from traditional PD.
Yeah, man, that is spot on because I mean, even during this course multiple times, you can literally see the ownership. You can see
Mm-hmm.
people reflecting and saying, you know what? I said I wanted to do this. This is something that I really feel passionate about and what I feel like I can change. And it's really like with the habit science, with most traditional PDs, it's kind of like a major overhaul of things
Sure.
that are happening. It's like a whole shift. And
Right.
with this, it's like, hey, you can change what you're doing in small pieces,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
those small decisions that you make, those small choices that you make in your instruction, your pedagogy, how you talk, how you speak, how you set up a classroom, how you interact, those small tweaks can lead to giant peaks. And I really
Yeah.
feel
I
like,
agree.
and I really feel like this course helps individuals to hone in on what makes sense and what is important to them. And it gives them the habit science and the tools to actually make it happen when it matters the most.
I
Right?
agree. And, to that point, I'd be remiss if I didn't just really acknowledge that, although I'm the brainchild behind the concept and then worked it out also with Dr. Jemelleh, like you and Dr. Meg and the rest of the folks at InStore have taken this and have really fleshed it out to far beyond what I could have done. And you have taken the baton and run with it. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Meg, Dr. Coes, and all the folks that have worked on this InStory specifically, and all the folks teaching the course. Just thank you for taking something that I thought of and worked out with Dr. Coes to become this really great thing. But I want to say something that I believe and that I'm learning. Giving students who have traditionally unfinished learning and who have been underserved is difficult, but we don't have to keep making it impossible. And
Mm.
that's like the idea. Like, oftentimes I have been the person standing up on the stage or in front of the screen, really asking folks to do major changes. And maybe it does take that for most. But I think you can make major changes in phases. And if you can make it something that seems like it's reasonable, then I think more sustained progress can be made. But it's when you dump the entire change mandate on people and say they have to do 90 things to be worthy. Folks will be inspired, but they won't be changed. What hopefully this model, this idea, and this course does is it helps folks to reach for those peaks, like you said, but in spaces and in stages that they can reasonably do it and continue doing it. And so I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And you kind of hit on it a bit. And I was going to talk about whenever we talk about, student affirming education, some people
Mm-hmm.
use the word equity. Whenever we talk
Mm-hmm.
about that, just in general, sometimes there are some challenges that come with that, right?
Sure,
There's some,
sure.
and so I kind of want to dive into some of those challenges. Like, what are the common challenges that educators face when implementing some of these principles of student affirming education in their classrooms? And how does this course prepare them to navigate those obstacles?
I think there's a few. First, it's trying to make a change while not understanding where I am in the process, right? If I'm trying to become a better teacher, what helps me to be a better teacher is to understand how far I am away from what I need to do, right? And
Mm.
so when I started to become a better teacher, it's because I read books and they let me know here's the standard. Here's how it should look. Here's what you should be doing. And then I measure myself against that. So I think oftentimes engaging in student affirming education for teachers is difficult because they don't really have a right estimation of where they are to where they need to be. So
Mhm.
that's the first step. The second thing is, well, what do I do if it doesn't work? Right?
Mhm.
There's a situation where I've tried it, it didn't work. They said to do this, but it didn't work. And so that's another barrier. Three is the barrier of bias. Like, I don't know what's already in my head that is preventing me from doing what's necessary. Like, I don't know what's in my head that makes me look at a certain student and assume certain things about their capacity, about their ability that I wouldn't use for other students, right? So, unearthing that like helps you to implement the practices as intended. And so, not understanding sort of where you are compared to where you need to be consistently, doing something that has failed, and then also not understanding the bias that comes up for you automatically are three significant barriers to being able to provide student affirming education in a real and practical way. And so I think the course teaching beyond those barriers, it helps you to the identity, unearth the bias, right? Understand where you are, have a right estimation of what you want to be in the distance between that. It also helps you to understand why maybe those efforts didn't fail or failed. And it might be because of the way in which you're using the habit science, or maybe the ways in which you're engaging in students, right? So it helps you to unearth what are some causes that might have made those efforts not successful that I can change. And so I think the course does help you with those particular three barriers and even more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that the course does really well, it kind of gives teachers a an idea of where they are in the scope of, hey, these are the things that I can control within my
Mm,
classroom, right? And then there's a step up when we say, hey, these are the things that are a little bit outside of your control, but you could make a difference with a lot of support,
that's
right?
right.
And then you say, oh,
Yeah,
these are things that are outside of your control, but over time for the longevity piece, you could see change, right? And so we set that up immediately. Okay, what are the things that you really could change within your scope? What are some things that you could change with a little bit more support? And then what are some things that will take a long time to get to, but you still can plug away with it with a consistent effort? And so a
that's
lot of
right.
time, so a lot of times when we think about student affirming education, sometimes the immediate response is outward. Like, this is
Mm,
what's happening. My principal is doing this. My teachers are doing this. My school environment is doing this. The community is doing this. And a lot of those factors can sometimes be so overwhelming. It feels like a giant. It's like, I don't even know where to start. Right. And so
great
this
point.
course, and so this course that you're talking about, like, we're kind of like, all right, we understand these things are happening, but let's bring it down to something manageable that
That's right.
you can actually change right now within a few weeks, that you can start making tweaks to what you're doing in your practice that will get you where you want to be. And so I
That's right.
think that is essential as well in the combination of what you talked about of why this course
Hmm.
is super unique and super impactful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
hmm And so just kind of just pivoting just slightly,
Yeah.
I want to look forward, right?
Mm.
As the Teaching Beyond the Barriers course continues to evolve, what future developments do you foresee for the course? How do you plan to further the impact on student affirming education across diverse spectrums? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Hopefully, the the course lives everywhere, right? As part of teacher preparation,
hmm
whether it be, I know you have experience with institutes of higher education, and whether it's there, whether it's in the central office, whether it's part of an onboarding to a school system, it's flexible, right? So because it does talk about issues of difference, but it spans the spectrum of that, and not just
hmm
focusing on one particular way in which we're different, but many ways in which we're different, and what that means for us and how we view students. So I'd love for that to live in downtown Detroit, and I'd love for it to be in rural Iowa. Like, I'd love for it to
hmm
be on the coast of the Maryland Eastern Shore, and I'd love for it to be deep in the heart of Baltimore City. I love for the course, because of, I believe, how flexible it can be, for it to be in all these different places. So that's one space. Secondly, I think teaching beyond barriers, if I would hope that not just teachers take this course, I would hope that administrators take this course, central office folks take this course, because what they could learn is, how do I need to set up an environment for this kind of professional development and these types of sort of habit science based ideas can live in my district, in my school. I would hope that leaders would look at it as well and try to create the environments where that type of learning can happen and even apply it to some of the things they're trying to help folks understand. So those are at least like two spaces, and I would hope that it continues to get revised and updated, right? That we continue to learn from the people taking the course, what worked, what didn't work. So my hope in the future is that it continues to become a revised and refined piece of courseware. And I think a point that I wanted to make was what's important about going at a manageable pace is you avoid this idea that you're pacing for privilege, which is a Gorski concept, by the manageable part is still rooted in what is the ideal and what is the right thing for kids. If you're going at a manageable pace, but your ultimate aim is not what's right, and that would not give everyone a student affirming education, and what doesn't give everybody equal access to the type of education that they deserve, regardless of any of the ways in which we're different, then it becomes, I think, pacing for privilege because where our aim is below what we should be given. But as long as we're making the path manageable and progressive based on what every kid needs, then I think that it becomes something that can really work. And so that's what I see. I see a future where this course lives, in, no matter the setting, that teachers look at it, that administrators look at it, and that ultimately practice is upgraded across the board.
That's super powerful. When I think about the whole idea of looking forward,
Mm-hmm.
something that kind of happened organically through the course was a community was built.
Mm.
A community was built.
Yeah.
We all know that sometimes when we get professional development in our schools, it's at the end of the day, it's been a long
Right.
week, and
Yeah.
it's like we got so many things that's on our mind and that we could be getting done, right? All of these
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
sometimes it becomes more of, I'm just doing it to get another thing checked off the box.
Right.
And I don't
Right.
care. All I want to do is check the box. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about community,
That's right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this course is set up in a way where people are asking questions. We're unearthing these different things in front of a group of people, and people are truly helping other people along the journey,
That's
right?
right.
And these
That's right.
people are coming from all over the United States with some of these courses that we're teaching, and they're all bonding together over one unique cause, and that is making sure our students get what they need and what they deserve. And so
That's
for
right.
me, looking forward is, for me, I really hope that this course again expands to administrators and educators and leaders, but I'm
Sure.
hoping that a community is built where people are
Mm.
genuinely reflecting on their practice and they are aware of the different decisions that they make and how they can call on their colleagues for support if they have blind spots, if they need to check to see where they are in the scope and the spectrum of things. And they can do that. Watch this. They could do that without the fear of losing their job. They could
Yeah.
do that without the fear
Yeah.
of a poor evaluation. They can do
Yeah.
that. They could do that in the comfort knowing that I have somebody who has my back and I'm not going to be penalized because of it, but my students will be rewarded on the back end if I do this right. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and so the last question you kind of hit on already, but it's
Mm.
kind of like why should educators enroll given the
Yeah.
complex of professional development options available all over the world? Why should they choose to invest their time in this course? What sets it apart? We talked about it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but just kind of your last thought on this.
I mean, you're involved in it, so that's number one, right?
Yeah,
So
state
that's
teachers of the
that's one reason. Just want to say, InStory is involved with it. There's been a lot of love and thinking that have gone into this. A lot of feedback that has gone into this from teachers. So this is a course created by teachers, for teachers, with teachers. So that's number one, right? I also think that it's something that cut down the jungle of difficulty with giving student affirming education to all kids. it gives you that machete. It gives you the ability to cut down those jungles so that you can see a clear path to providing students everything that they need. And at the end, what you'll find is that the jungles were not only external, but they were internal as well. And so I think that this course provides you with an opportunity to grow, to be better, to do better. And I think that it follows something that I've been thinking about. I've said many times in previous conversations and in speeches and in interviews that in the end, what will save teaching is teaching. Now I'm beginning to understand that in the end, what will save teaching is teaching and learning. And so I understand that folks believe that teaching involves learning, but it's important to make those things explicit because there are a lot of folks that teach without knowledge. And so what this course helps you to do is to learn so that you can teach. And I love Maya Angelou, and I appreciate the often repeated phrase, when you know better, you do better. However, I think when you know better, you have to choose better. And this course helps you to choose better through the learning progression so that you then can do better sustainably.
Man, that's powerful, man. Josh,
Appreciate you,
I
sir.
want to thank you for being here today, for sharing your expertise, your thoughts, your brilliance with us today, hearing your insight, and just seeing the amazing work that you're doing and that you will continue to do over the years. I want to give you your flowers. You are an
Thank you, sir.
incredible, brilliant scholar, and I'm just honored to be able to work with you on such an amazing project. Listen, to learn more about Josh's work in education, Josh, can you tell them where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you, sir. And my feelings are likewise to you for your brilliant scholarship. You can find me on Twitter at JoshParker777. And I just look forward to seeing what this course does, and Godspeed to all of you.
Yes, thank you for joining us on the third episode of the Teaching Beyond the Barriers podcast. Remember, every conversation, every idea, and every step we take brings us closer to breaking down the barriers and unlocking the true potential of education. Meet us back in the Teaching Beyond the Barriers podcast for our next episode. Take care, everybody.